All right, everybody, good evening. Thanks for coming out on a gorgeous evening to talk about the future of our downtown. I'm Chapin Spencer, Director of Public Works here in the city of Burlington. And I want to say how excited I am to be starting tonight, kicking off this next phase of the transformational project of Great Streets, Bank and Cherry. And together, we will be able to right the wrongs of urban renewal and re-knit our downtown street grid and restore the vitality of our downtown by having our street grid back, by having new local businesses and new residents down in the center of our downtown. Thanks to City Place Burlington, the developers of the project provided the rights of way, the former rights of way of St. Paul Street and Pine Street. They provided the property back to the city on which we are going to reestablish the street grid. And additionally, thanks to our federal and state partners, Federal Highway Association and VTrans, there have been additional grants secured that will help us renovate not just around City Place Burlington, but 10 blocks of the center of our downtown, completely transformed for the future needs of our community, not the needs of last century. I'm really pleased tonight to have an ongoing conversation with you all. We are standing on a process that has been underway through the development of Great Street Standards, which has informed the work on St. Paul Street, the work done in City Hall Park, and now the active work happening on Main Street. And this project too has had significant design work that has occurred to date. And tonight you'll hear about the additional blocks and the additional design details that we need your feedback on to guide this project to final design and construction. We have with us tonight a great group of our staff and our contract team. For staff, we have Julia Orsaki and Laura Wheelock from the Department of Public Works, and then Kara Al-Nasrawi from Business and Workforce Development. And our consultant team, we have Greg Goyette, Israel Maynard, and we have Patrick Olsted and Hannah Loop. Can I have you all recognize yourselves? Awesome. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julia. Let's together figure out how to revitalize our downtown, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Chapin.
Yes.
All right, everybody. So I'm Julia Orsaki. I'm a public works engineer with Burlington DPW. I'll just give a super quick overview of the presentation tonight. We're kind of just went through introductions. I'm going to take everybody through the project history for Bank and Cherry, of which there is a lot. I'll talk a little bit about the building blocks of our design concept and how we got to where we are. And then our consultant team will talk to you about the proposed improvements, next steps, and the type of input that we're looking for in this stage of the project. Brief rundown of the staff, which we just went through. So this project actually started back in 2016 when voters approved a tax increment financing TIF-funded project for improvements to Bank and Cherry Streets. And this also included funding to purchase Pine Street and St. Paul Street from City Place Burlington, the developers. So with that funding, the city advanced designs for Bank Street and Cherry Street. At that point, the project ended at Church Street, which is the boundary of the TIF district. And they got city council approval for their concept in May of 2018 and advanced the design to the 75% phase. So it was pretty fleshed out at that point. Simultaneously, the developers were developing designs for the St. Paul and Pine Street segments that are reconnecting the downtown. They were going through a different process. They were approved by the Development Review Board in February of 2017 for the concepts of that street. So then in 2018, the City Place project, which was providing our TIF funding, stalled. And so what we affectionately refer to as the pit was born. And all of the street project paused as well. So since then, the city has been looking for different funding opportunities so that our street reconstruction wasn't tied to the TIF funding anymore. So last year, we were fortunate to receive 2 big federal grants. So we got actually $15 million from the congressionally directed spending from Senator Leahy, and that's for Cherry Street specifically. And then we also got a $22 million raise grant to add Bank Street and the Pine Street and St. Paul Street segments. So with this new federal funding, we're not constrained to just the TIF district anymore. So we were able to add the most eastern blocks of the project area and rebuild the entire corridor for both Bank and Cherry going all the way to Winooski Ave so that we have a consistent corridor. As part of the RAISE grant, we were also awarded funding for a workforce development program that our Business and Workforce Development Department is managing for us. And Cara from the city's Workforce Development Department is going to talk a little bit about that.
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm Cara Al-Nasrawi, the Director of Business and Workforce Development for the City of Burlington. A trend that we're now seeing in some of these large federal grants for large capital projects is a workforce development portion that goes along with the grant. So my team will be managing that portion. It breaks out to roughly $1.5 million. And we are supporting Burlington residents in either building a new skill set, changing their skill set. We will be partnering with local organizations who are accredited in this curriculum space, and we will be running throughout the project cohorts of students who will learn about Construction 101, Weatherization 101, and things of that sort. So it's actually a really great opportunity that this grant comes with this funding as well. So the city is not only completing this project with this fund, with these funds, but we are also able to provide fully funded training, and that would include also childcare. They would, when they graduate, they would have a set of tools, they would have heavy equipment operation skills, and through these programs, they will also have on-the-job training, including on the project itself. And that will be, we'll be managing that for the next 4 to 5 years.
Thanks, Cara. So back to our street portion of this project. The concepts for Bank Street and Cherry Street and St. Paul and Pine are all based on these 2 really foundational planning documents for the city, the Great Streets Standards for Downtown and Plan BTV Walk Bike. So the Great Streets BTV Downtown Standards was really a deep dive. It was adopted in 2018, and this is kind of our guidebook for balancing widths and uses in the right-of-way and defining what streets downtown do what. It also provides a lot of standards for the types of materials that we'll use downtown, so we have a consistent language across our downtown grid, and also stormwater opportunities to get runoff, infiltration opportunities so that we're not sending too much water into Lake Champlain without being treated, and also improved lighting. The other document is Plan BTV Walk Bike, which for our downtown really creates this slow zone with shared streets where there's traffic calming and shared lanes in the downtown core. And then Pearl Street and Main Street are really our major bicycling corridors that connect to our broader network. And with that, I'll pass it off to our consultant team to discuss some of the improvements to our street.
All right, I'm Patrick Olstad with SE Group. I'm a landscape architect. And so I'll just kind of give you a quick overview of some of the streetscape elements we have in here. Let's see here. So this shows you the kind of overall downtown that this streetscape project encompasses. So you can see kind of on the far right would be South Winooski Avenue. And so that's sort of the eastern limit of the project. The northern limit of the project is Cherry Street, and the southern limit is Bank Street. And as Julia mentioned, we have these new street connections running north-south with Pine Street and St. Paul Street with the City Place project between it. Let me just kind of run through here. So we have, this is a section on Cherry Street. This is kind of a typical showing the relationships, spatial relationships between the road and the street and the sidewalk. And you know, we're really trying to create some pedestrian and bike-friendly street environments while also accommodating the necessary turning movements of emergency vehicles and larger trucks. So really trying to find a nice balance here and maintaining, you know, a fair amount of as much on-street parking as we can, while also looking for some opportunities within the sidewalk zone to create maybe some small gathering areas. We'll see that in certain places. Look for opportunities for stormwater treatment. So we're kind of making use of these bump out spaces in different locations to do that. And so you can kind of see the typical section is a sidewalk zone right next to the buildings. And then we have an amenity zone between the sidewalk and the road. And that amenity zone is where all the streetscape elements like street trees, street lights, benches, bike parking, parking kiosks, all that sort of infrastructure is organized in this amenity zone. And as you can see on the current like St. Paul's Street project that was constructed a few years back, it's kind of following in places some of that same model, where you have like a strip of a paver band, permeable pavers that allows water to infiltrate into the ground. The trees are provided with underground soil, which is kind of it's a pretty significant investment to get street trees to grow well in an urban environment. So we're using these things called soil cells that are a structural component underneath the sidewalk that allow for a lot more good planting soil for the trees to really grow and thrive. And then we're also looking for opportunities in the streetscape for public art. So and some of this stuff is kind of what we want to hear from people on the boards in the back, and there's an online version where that's where there's kind of some interesting opportunities to do some things that really enhance the character of the downtown. And then things like site furnishings, we have sort of these standards, but there could be some opportunities for variation here and there, maybe with the colors. I think we want to have a unified downtown aesthetically, but maybe a little bit of a different character on some of the blocks. So let's keep running through this. This shows just a different section on Cherry Street. This is further to the east. So this shows you know, an area for stormwater planting and one of the bump outs, and you know, shows things like on bike parking within that amenity zone. And this one shows even a little further the idea of having some kind of public gathering space. That's in front of Frankie's restaurant, where we thought it could be kind of cool to have some kind of outdoor dining space, maybe get some granite benches out there, some plantings to kind of get a little bit of a buffering from the road, and have just like this really nice place for people to sit, kind of liven up that streetscape. So this shows the plan version of that. So you can see on the east there where that gathering space is close to South Winooski Avenue. There's a small potential stormwater space just to the left of that. And then you can kind of see the typical street with what are called sharrows, or shared bike and vehicular lanes. The pace of traffic on this street should be pretty slow. They're not very wide lanes, and there's a lot of kind of visual stimuli to keep drivers going pretty slow. Yeah, and so you can see quite a bit of street trees to create shade and just beautification. Let's keep running through this. So this shows more of a typical detail looking at that amenity zone with the permeable pavers. For these new blocks, we are envisioning using tree grates. On the current Lower St. Paul Street, we have stormwater planters. We don't envision that on these streets just due to the higher level of pedestrian activity, but there are other places within the overall project that we are proposing them. Okay, so on to Bank Street. So the big exciting thing on Bank Street is that it would be being proposed to go curbless. So that's a pretty big change from what people are used to, but I think is a really exciting opportunity to change the character of that street, make it a little bit more pedestrian friendly. And the idea there is that it could be actually kind of what's considered like a festival street and could be closed off for outdoor events. So I think it's kind of a little bit more in the European model of how streets are dealt with there. But it would still accommodate all the normal turning movements of vehicles. It does create some additional design considerations when you go curbless. For example, anyone with visual impairment, we have to be conscious of people not just wandering into the street. So we're proposing these tactile kind of warning bands along the edge of the kind of where the sidewalk and that amenity zone interfaces. So we're safety, of course, is with all these streets is a very high priority. But it does create some really interesting opportunities for the kind of the wheelchairs. Yeah, I mean, all these streets are designed to be as wheelchair friendly as they can be. So yes, that is another goal of this project, is to make the downtown, improve the accessibility. And we have designated accessible parking spaces with breaks in the curb to allow direct connection to the sidewalk, and very smooth surfaces for wheelchairs. So this is another kind of just typical block, section on Bank Street. You can see the benches, street trees, and that's the plan view. So this shows, again, the idea of trying to capture some of the space for stormwater treatment, potentially on that lower southeast block, maybe some kind of public gathering space on that northwest block. We showed, some tables and chairs out there, which may not make that much sense given the current use of the jeweler that's there now, but just the idea that could be any number of things that can encourage outdoor gathering. So that's another thing we'd want to hear from people. Should that be just more of an informal space? Should there be fixed permanent seating? Should there be public art? I think there are a number of options that can be considered there.
Why not leave the benches there that have been there for years and let people sit there?
Yeah, well, we are upgrading all the site furnishings on these new blocks, but there will be benches in the design for sure. Flush curb means it's just the road and the sidewalk are in the same plane. So there's no, typically you have a 6-inch curb and it's just all in the same plane. Should we run through the whole thing first, or? Yeah, okay. So this shows a typical detail for Bank Street. That shows that tactile warning strip that I was mentioning at the edge of the sidewalk there, the permeable pavers and the concrete band, and then the curb that's just flush with the road.
Wouldn't some people get confused with the road and the sidewalk just because there wasn't a curb between the sidewalk and the road?
Yeah, can you repeat? Actually, I didn't totally catch that. Can you repeat that question one more time?
I said, wouldn't some people get confused for people that are crossing the road and there's a sidewalk but no curbing?
Yeah, so the question is, would people get confused crossing the road onto the sidewalk and there's no curbing? I think it could take some getting used to, but the crosswalk treatments are actually pretty similar. Where people should be crossing, it's a pretty similar type of treatment compared to a regular road where...
Some people don't use it.
Yeah,
People walk in the road.
yeah,
And on
Yep.
And if there was a thing where sidewalk and the road sort of intersect, like you would have a crosswalk, I'm visually impaired,
Yeah.
okay? And I have seen a lot of people jaywalk, as you would call it, in the middle of the road, and I said, no, I'm not doing that, I'm using a crosswalk. And so, I mean, what about crosswalk for people that are visually impaired?
So the crosswalks, there are a couple things there. We have the cast iron detectable warning strips at the crosswalks. So that provides a tactile kind of awareness that you're going into the road. So that is proposed for every intersection. Also, the crosswalks are going to have a different texture than the road itself. They're going to be a paver. So that helps differentiate also the surface of the crosswalk compared to the regular asphalt. That's another cue. And then, as I mentioned, in terms of mid-block, there is going to be this tactile strip along the entire edge of the sidewalk. So hopefully that would be something that would be noticed, that you're getting off of the sidewalk. And then you also have things like site furnishings, on-street parking that are sort of additional cues that you might be getting off of that sidewalk. So I think we're doing everything we can from a design perspective to create a safe environment.
I mean, I just brought it up, I mean, I've seen a lot of people
Yeah.
jaywalk.
Oh, yeah. No, and it's a good point. And we have actually in places in the design anticipated that and made some adjustments here and there to account for that. Yeah. Yep, sir. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. So this is St. Paul Street. So this is one of the completely new blocks showing typical street there. Again, pretty similar to same kit of parts with the amenity zone and sidewalk. This is the plan view. So on the south side of the road showing City Place Burlington. So that's obviously going to be a big transformation of that block. Going on to Pine Street, same type of thing. And that shows the plan view there. There are some grade conditions kind of on the mid-block. You can see a couple of retaining walls to help deal with some grade changes. And then you have the building kind of spanning over the road on the south side or the right side of the sheet there. So that building will be maintained, and there's going to be an overhead clearance bar to warn vehicles that there's a height limit. So I'll turn it over to.
Hey, so I'm Israel Maynard. I'm also with the design team, so I'm just going to take you through next steps, and then we'll get into the questions. So for next steps, we do have a couple of additional public meetings that will be coming up. We have the Church Street Commission, also the Public Works Commission, also likely to happen in June, and then City Council for approval on June 24th. That isn't the last public meeting that we'll have as part of this project. As part of the process, there's going to be additional follow-up with a public information meeting after conceptual plans. But for now, those are kind of the upcoming. Design development for this phase is June to October. So we're planning to have that conceptual plan package all developed in October, and then we'll get into the NEPA review, which can be a lengthy process. After the NEPA review, we'll do the final design and then get into the permitting and right-of-way. That's anticipated to be April 2025 to May of 2026, with construction starting on Cherry Street in 2026 and then Bank Street in 2027. We do want your input on this. I know as Patrick was talking, he did say a lot about, like, we're looking to, none of this stuff is set in stone. Everything that was here was just to give people ideas of what could be, and we really want to hear input on what should be. So really want to hear about what those intersections should look like, what we should have for bike parking and where seating would be appropriate, what type of seating, whether it should be fixed benches or movable chairs, what type of signage for wayfinding people want.
If you have larger signs for people that are visually impaired,
Yeah, all the signs will be compliant with the manual for uniform traffic control devices, which sets the minimum font sizes for signs. So we'll definitely make sure that that's rules are followed. The other thing we're going to want input on is parking, where the shared loading zone should be, what the hours should be for parking, if people want more short-term parking or longer-term parking. Definitely want input on ADA accessibility, which is the American with Disabilities Act, so that's those accessible spots that we were talking about earlier. We want to talk about where these high turnover parking spots should be and where should EV parking be if included. And then we also want to talk about the operations. So one thing that Patrick didn't note on Bank Street was that we're actually looking to take out that right turn lane. So instead of having a left and a right, it would be one lane for all movements, and we believe that it will actually increase the safety of that intersection by narrowing things up there and giving vehicles on that side street the ability to move out a little bit before making the cross into the garage. So things we definitely. Yeah. Yeah, so the question was regarding the intersection of Bank Street and South Winooski, how we're going to treat the driveway across from Bank Street for UPS, and that's definitely something that will be in consideration. Yeah, it's in the intersection. So that will definitely be looked at, the signal equipment there, and the potential could be there to give that drive a signal face. So that will definitely be evaluated.
Yeah, but here's another thing too. Since they got that new road called Champlain Parkway, are you going to be putting in signals near Cherry Street?
So the question is, with the Champlain Parkway construction, would we be putting in signals near Cherry Street?
Yes, because there's Cathedral Square has a lot of elderly people.
Yeah, I think there's intersection at Battery and Cherry, or a signal at Battery and Cherry.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about Champlain Parkway connecting into it.
Champlain Parkway doesn't connect there, there's no one there.
Okay.
Battery Street is connected to Champlain Parkway, but Champlain Parkway project ends before you get anywhere close to Cherry or Pearl.
Well, we live on Cherry. Cathedral Square lives on Cherry Street.
Yeah, so there'll be intersection control at Pine and Cherry as part of this project. When Pine Street gets reconnected, that will involve some traffic control there that should help out.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yep. All right, thank you. Thanks for the question. Another thing we want to hear from today is, what is Bank Street's character? What is Cherry Street's character? What kind of colors do people want? Should everything be uniform? Should we have multiple colors in our amenities? And here's some ideas of, what the different amenities we might have out there are. And yeah, we're just going to open it up to questions now. So if anybody has a slide they want us to return to, just let me know, and I can flip back there and we can discuss. Yeah, folks online, please raise your hand or use Q&A. Let's start right here.
So I would like to go back to this feature of the flush curve street. I didn't hear a rationale that seemed, I didn't hear really any rationale, but maybe a hint, maybe it felt a little bit like this a design inspiration that doesn't have an explanation. I don't know. Is there some way of explaining why it seemed like a valuable thing to do?
Yeah, so for this one, a curbless street makes, it's basically sharing the entire right-of-way with all users, right? It's not that really hard separation between this is vehicle and this is roadway. And what it allows to happen is that Patrick touched on a little bit, is that festival street opportunity where at certain times and for certain events, you could close the whole right-of-way to vehicles, and then the whole thing is open to pedestrians and whatever activity you're doing without having that vertical barrier of that curb.
Okay, it's just interesting, and I just wondered if it was done intentionally, is it evidence-based? Has it been done in other places to show that it has a utility that you expected it to have?
Yeah, this is definitely a strategy that, oh, sorry about that. So to repeat the question was asked whether the curbless street has been used in other situations. And it has. As far as I'm aware, there's no other locations in Burlington. Oh, sorry. We just finished this one last year, but University Place was constructed partially curbless. So yeah. So it does have uses, and it's not the only city it's been used in, and it's been studied extensively and is shown to be safe when the proper controls are in place. Like Patrick had talked about, tactile strips along the back of the amenity zone so that visually impaired can feel when they're on the sidewalk and when they're not on the sidewalk. There's also going to be material changes, so there's visual color differences and pattern differences to identify when you're in vehicle areas and not in vehicle areas.
Okay, so I'm going to finish my comments on this subject, and I'll leave the last questions. The thing that concerns me about it is that as somebody who's lived in Burlington for 10 years, with bicycle rider, car rider, and a pedestrian, I see this curved zone as being a place where bicyclists are weaving in and out of traffic, and it's even more difficult. Now, I'm not opposed to the idea of a flush curb. What it means to me is that something external to this project needs to happen, which is the revision of what we expect from bicyclists.
Yeah, and I think, yep, so the question is how will this curbless street impact bicyclists? Will this, I guess,
Bicyclists impact
how the,
pedestrians and car drivers when there's no curb.
yeah, will it promote, I guess, aggressive bicycle riding is essentially the meat of the question. One thing I want to point out is we do have, shared lanes here. So it's anticipated that bicycle riders, especially the confident bicycle riders, will ride in the lane. They're going to feel more comfortable on the smooth pavement than going across, the paver belt or weaving in and out of trees. It's going to be much more efficient for them to just ride in the lane, which is the intent. For less confident drivers or riders or young children, the sidewalks will be widened, and there'll be the opportunity for young children and less confident riders to be out on the widened sidewalks. Question right here.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One is the lighting. So in the cross-section pictures you showed, the lighting is contained in the street, not the sidewalk. Are you trying to light the sidewalk as well as the street? Is the lighting height set so that it's more friendly for the people walking?
Yeah, so the question was, is the lighting going to be for just the street, or if it will be for the entire right-of-way, including the sidewalk? And that is the intent, is that, lighting will be done as part of the final design, be started in the preliminary design, but they'll do full photometric layout to show what the actual lighting levels on the ground will be, and it'll be tested for, the normal things like uniformity to make sure you don't have really bright spots and then really dark spots. They will check to make sure there's not shadowing in areas where people would be potentially crossing the road, things of that nature will be checked with the lighting design. So these sections just kind of show a sample of what the lighting would look like. There may be situations where there are two luminaires, or so there might be one on the back if required. Okay.
The second question is relative to
Well-
parking. We have, even the projects that we're going through here,
Yeah, so this is Laura Wheelock with Public Works. I'm here to answer the question that was in the room, which was about how to make the on-street parking be functional, how to make it turn over, and what the rates might be to encourage that. So there's actually a user rate study that is almost finalized that analyzes the parking rates in the downtown and looks to see how we compare with other communities and based on our utilization. So we are looking at that actively. As it relates to the parking spaces, because of the new streets and some of the new parking opportunities on Bank Street, right now we are essentially parking neutral. With the spaces that we reallocated for some of the parklets or the stormwater facilities, right now the entire project is neutral. So. Do you have more questions, Bob?
I just wanted to say how much I love this. This is unbelievably beautiful. The trees are going to do so well with your how you plant them and water them. It's an incredible opportunity to change the face of the building.
Yeah, we'll take the one in the back, and then we'll take a couple of the online. So you want to go? Yep.
Yep. I'm going to repeat the question. So the question in the room was whether or not that there's any possibility for these street sections to have no parking in them or a reduced amount of parking to be able to give space back to pedestrians. One of the goals with the Great Street Standards was about rebalancing our rights of way. So your point is not lost on me that there are places that we are adding back in parking. When this project had originally started back in 2018, that was something that the community valued first and foremost, and even asking for transformation of any of these spaces were challenging conversations. It is a great point. It is something that we should relook at as we have this public feedback comments and process, whether it is something that people want to change how that's currently allocated. So it's possible. Do you have any follow-ups? Be more like.
Yeah, so the question is could parking be removed to be rain garden or other area? So we did have some areas where we have identified spaces to be removed to be public space or rain gardens or stormwater treatment, so that has happened. We don't need all of the available space for stormwater to meet our requirements, but we will absolutely need to take some space to meet stormwater requirements. Thank you for the question. Yeah, we're going to take a couple online. So the first question we have from online, it says, more of a comment than a question. While I'm not enamored with the increase in hotel space at the expense of housing, I am thrilled the city is reconnecting grid streets. I'm also glad we're considering climate change with more trees and green infrastructure. So thanks for that comment. Next one from Martin Wolf. We have, thank you for this plan that beautifies a currently graceless area of our city. Would the city consider making Pine Street and St. Paul Street alternating one-way streets between Main and Cherry? This would allow for separated bike lane. So the answer is that St. Paul Street needs to remain two-way due to the buses. So that was not considered, but it could be considered for other streets. Yeah, so that's all we have in the Q&A for now. We'll go back to the room right in the front row.
I have two questions and a comment.
Sure.
I'll break them up. What, you put the time frame for starting construction on Bank and Cherry as 2006 and the 2026. What is the time frame for doing the work on St. Paul and Pine?
Yeah, so that construction is partially occurring. Oh, sorry, Laura. Yeah, it's hard, yeah. So the question is when will the Pine, the Pine and St. Paul construction happen? So that'll be happening concurrently. Some of it will be done as part of an early phase to kind of build as the building is built. So it won't be finished, streetscape won't be finished until the 25 and 2026 construction. So those will be built concurrently.
So they're 2025, 2026, and then the Cherry and Bank are
Or did it?
26 and 27.
Did I mess that up? Sorry.
2027 for the cross streets, Pine and St. Paul are 2027. Just put them on the slide and then I wouldn't have to.
Yeah, sorry.
Next time, put it on the slide.
They start with Bank Street and they'll follow its construction.
Okay. Second question is, are you undergrounding all the utilities on these streets when you're making these improvements?
So Cherry already has underground, I believe. Bank Street, sorry. Will all the utilities be undergrounded? So Bank Street will be undergrounded is the current plan. Cherry Street's previously undergrounded, so yeah.
So there won't be any, they're also on those cross streets.
Yeah, cross streets will also be undergrounded.
The comment I have is it relates to the question about use of the parking garage. The downtown, what's now called the downtown parking garage, it's really hard for people to find their way to and from. That's coming, if you go down Main Street and
Mhm.
that, there's a little trail and, and there's a little trail that comes over from Cherry. There really needs to be some thought put into making that more of an accessible, findable way. And it's obviously somewhat outside of the boundary of the end of Bank Street. But I really think that we're never going to get enough use of that parking garage unless somebody comes up with a creative way to facilitate access for people from that garage to the downtown, up Main Street or up Cherry. And so I'm suggesting that somebody really think about that. If there's even like a trolley that goes, loops around eventually from the downtown, all the way down Bank and then back up through the couple of little corners and back. Something needs to be done, and this has been a problem for forever. So
Okay.
I'm just making that as a comment.
Sure,
It would be really helpful if we thought about that.
sure. So yeah, the comment was that the downtown parking garage is difficult to locate, so that there should be more thought put into potential ways to make that more accessible and easier to get to. Right here, thank you.
So I have some concerns about one-way streets. I live downtown. Before there were one-way streets on South Champlain, I routinely went up and down South Champlain to do my business. Now we actually have one-way blocks pointed in opposite directions. It's crazy to me. I don't know what planning went into that or when it was, how it was decided. Like, it is, the UPS building, awful. So, given it is happening, you're going to explain to me something about it. But we're going to talk about this new project. So, the way I want to capture my feelings is just to say, don't want downtown to become a labyrinth. It should not be where you have to go around 3 blocks to get from 2 points, between 2 points that are on a straight line to each other. South Champlain is,
So the question in the room was commenting on how the city has recently changed South Champlain Street to be one-way leading off of Main Street, and followed up with a, one north and one south, and commented with the lack of support for one-way streets in the downtown. To answer the question, it is exclusively for Main Street. To be able to provide additional parking on the streets, we had to be able to turn them one-way northbound so that the fire department has still a reasonable amount of space, and we couldn't allow two-way traffic. It is for the duration of the Main Street project to be able to restore parking once the contractor gets on the actual corridor. And then we will have a public conversation about whether or not that should remain or not, and we will make sure we reach out.
I just want to say, with parking on both sides of South Champlain Street block between Main Street and College Street, it was two-way and it was never a problem. I don't understand why it needed to be one-way so there could be more parking when there was already parking on both sides of the street. But I'm very glad to hear that you're planning on coming back to the issue of construction is over. I understood from a department employee who was obviously wrong that it was going to be permanent. I suppose you were telling me it's permanent for the time being. This is not permanent.
It is only approved for the duration of the construction.
Yes,
We will
I'll-
have to go back to the public process to
That's cool. Thank you.
make it.
All right, thank you. Comment, right, question right here.
I also have two questions and a comment, but I'll try and be as concise as possible. My comment is just in response to the topic of parking garages. I just wanted to share, as a cisgender female, especially at night, I hate parking in parking garages when considering safety. So I would just, humbly request that that is considered and that balance is considered when building on-street parking versus parking garages. But also, I love the idea of balance with rain gardens and greenery as well, hardscape and softscape. But, so my first question is just, I love the idea of increased trash and recycling receptacles in the city. I personally have always felt that there are not enough, but I was wondering if there had been any consideration about compost receptacles as well.
Yeah, so the question is regarding, have we considered compost receptacles to go with the trash receptacles that are being proposed? I'll let Laura answer that one.
That might be like a lot of city entities working
Yeah.
together. I might be naive, but
Yeah, there are some challenges with doing compost in the public right-of-way. DPW is still exploring how to functionally manage that and still keep our streets clean. Even though we do empty the waste facilities often, compost is just a different nature as it relates to critters that can get into that in a very quick manner. So we are working on it, but I don't have a solution for it. These facilities that we are putting in would have space if we wanted to expand for compost when we figure out that management solution, but we just don't have them planned at this point.
And then my last question was just around the tree plantings. I was looking for some clarification. It seemed, perhaps I misunderstood, but it seemed there were two different types. One on St. Paul Street and the other more on the Bank and Cherry Streets. And I think a comment was made about the St. Paul type not being feasible on Bank or Cherry. It was toward the beginning of the presentation, I think, but I was just looking for clarification on the two different types, assuming I understood correctly, and why the one type would not be feasible on the format.
Yeah, so the question is regarding the street trees and the feasibility of different types of street trees.
Can someone help me out?
Yeah, so the difference is that in some locations, there's planters, tree planters versus tree grates. And I don't know, Patrick, do you have any question or comment about why there's a difference other than aesthetic? Okay. Yep, thanks. Yeah, so the reason for the difference is that in areas where we can get stormwater, there's a stormwater opportunity with the planters, whereas the tree grates aren't as much of a stormwater benefit. So in areas where there was not anticipated to be as much pedestrian activity around them, we were able to go with planters. Thanks. Any other questions? Sure.
You characterize me saying I was opposed to one-way streets downtown. I'm opposed to one-way streets that point opposite directions, end to end. It produces a labyrinthine effect where I have to go around a million blocks to get home. One-way streets that are systematically and reasonably developed is fine. You know, you just, if they not stand next to each other. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, sounds. So there's a comment that says, at the risk of going beyond the scope of your project, how is the city integrating public safety into design besides lighting, e.g. community service, police monitoring, avoiding spaces for drug use with lack of support to assist people? Yeah.
So the Great Street Standards started to look at that. We engaged the police department as we were picking out ways that the amenity belts would be organized, just making sure that there were not long linear features for places for people to hide behind. Things like bulletin boards have visibility underneath. So that is the way that we're trying to ensure that the right-of-way space side to side is transparent so different activities can be seen and noted. One of the questions that usually comes up pretty often is about benches and how they can have sometimes unattractive activities, but really the benefits of starting to repopulate benches uniformly throughout our right-of-way corridor is going to make it so that these activities where you might find somebody who is choosing to rest on a bench for a longer period of time is a more dispersed activity. These folks don't always want to be congregated in high concentration groups. A lot of times, one of my favorite memories before I worked for the city is walking around Battery Park, and there was a houseless gentleman out there, and my dog, who was leery of every individual, just loved running up to him. And he just wanted to be on his quiet park bench. Our rights-of-way don't have benches anymore, and so with Main Street, St. Paul Street, and now Bank and Cherry, we're really going to repopulate that and provide seating opportunities for all of our citizens. But that is probably the area that we still struggle with the most, is sometimes the activities that happen on benches.
Let me grab this last comment online and then we'll get right to you. So another comment. I looked at the GMTA map of Burlington and no bus presently uses St. Paul between Cherry and Main Street, so the response given earlier was not accurate. Is GMTA planning to use St. Paul after this construction? And that is, yeah, affirmed. They are planning to use that street once it's fully constructed. Thanks for the comment. Another one in the room right here.
Do you know if you're going to consider putting maybe more drinking fountains and toilets, public toilets, in any part of these changes?
So the question is regarding, are public toilets and drinking fountains being considered as part of the public improvements? So I'll let the city answer that one.
That is certainly a challenging topic. There's not any currently planned within this immediate plan. We would certainly welcome comments or notes about it. We do receive it occasionally. Having had that request, we also have found, though, that management of a public restroom does require staff to be very proximate. Cherry Street and Bank Street, proximate to the marketplace, might have that ability of city staff. As the city considers the downtown improvement district, maybe we might have that staff that could support that cleaning and monitoring of those types of facilities, but at this immediate moment, we do not. But it would be worthwhile to look at where one could be sited and maybe installed in the future. I don't know that the city will be ready in the time frame that we're ready to construct, but it is a great point that we should plan for it. No drinking fountain necessarily, but it would be a welcome comment.
Comment over here. Question. Yes, the comment was regarding the pedestrian crossing of Battery Street at Cherry Street and the potential for a path connecting on the other side of Battery Street. So our scope is to that intersection. So we will look at potential pedestrian improvements there. We haven't talked at all about a path on the other side. Julia, I don't know if that's another thing.
Yeah, so, whoa, very loud. DPW in partnership with CEDO and Office of City Planning, we're actually doing a study right now to look at different stairway and path options to get down to the waterfront, either from Cherry Street or Pearl Street. As you know, it's really steep. This isn't something that's funded yet, but it's something we're looking at and kind of thinking about the future of downtown and accessing the waterfront for that connectivity. And this investment into Cherry Street is a huge reason that we would, you know, eventually look to make that connection to the waterfront too.
Oh, another one online. Another question online. How are art spaces being addressed? Is there an application process? Who chooses? So I'll let Julia handle that.
Yes, so the Burlington City Arts Department handles our procurement for public art. Public art by ordinance is part of every project. 1% of the project budget goes towards public art pieces. It is an open selection process where BCA, Burlington City Arts, issues a call for proposals, and a selection panel composed of people involved in the project design and also community members looks through those proposals and chooses the final pieces, and also kind of collaboratively picks spots where those pieces of art can be cited.
So, sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't. Yep. Yeah, so the question, or is more of a comment stating that the retaining wall that's proposed along Pine Street could potentially be an art wall or a space for a mural, which is a great comment. Check online again, see if anything new. Nothing new. Anybody else in the room have a comment or question? Hearing nothing. Anybody else online? All right.
I think it's probably the last one, because we're ready to wrap up.
Yep.
But I would like to say that the person who drives the truck has to park as close to the curb as possible. Square granite curbs, dangerous to the tires. I just don't know, are you planning on using granite curbs? Because they last longer and that's good. Is there any possibility of them not being cut? Can they be coupled with temporary?
Yeah, we can look into that. Sorry, let me repeat the question. So the question is regarding vertical granite curb and its potential for damaging tires, especially for wider vehicles needing to park in narrow on-street parking. So the question was, could the curb be cut with a chamfer or rounding to make it less damaging to tires? So that's a great comment. It's something we could look at as we develop the project. Another question here in the room. Yes. Yeah, so the question is regarding winter storm events and snow storage and that's effect on reducing the available parking width. So I don't really have much to add to that other than it's kind of like a maintenance issue, whereas like I know after storms, they get out there, they try to get everything as clean as possible, and then truck out snow as it builds up. One of the things we do have is we have an amenity belt that will provide additional space for the snow to be. Laura's gonna supplement that one.
From DPW, one of the things that we look at as we're improving these streets is that there is a secondary clearing. It doesn't help necessarily on the night of the event, but our crews have been going back and trying to pull that snow that is either immediately on the curb line, which is preventing cars from getting tight against the curb, and also starting to clear off some of the amenity space so that that is restored throughout the winter season. But it is something that does follow a snowstorm by about 2 to 3 days.
Anything else from the room? Seeing nothing more online? All right, so the presentation will be up online as well as surveys and other engagement things. So please go to the website and check it out and provide additional feedback as it comes to you. Thanks, everybody.